The Helios 44-2 is one of the most popular old Russian lenses used on digital cameras today. It's well known for its swirly bokeh. But it's not the only version of the 44 series made in Russia between 1958 and 1999. My interest in collecting Russian lenses dates back to the 1990s when I worked in St. Petersburg, and I thought it might be helpful to explain how the Helios 44 lenses are different, show some of my photos taken with the lenses, and recommend the best one overall. The 44-2 is a 58mm f2 lens with an M42 mount. It has 8 blades and a preset aperture mechanism. This particular lens was made in the JOV factory in the USSR in 1975. The M42 mount makes it easy to adopt to modern digital cameras, and because it was made in large numbers, it's relatively simple to find and cheap to buy. The lens's strong reputation is built on its swirly bokeh, but new users are often surprised at just how well it performs on large modern sensors. Wide open, it's nice and sharp in the center of the image. I'd say my copy, and it's important to note that there are copy variations, but my copy is sharper wide open than many much more expensive old and new lenses. It has a good minimum focus distance, so you can get quite close to objects, not in a macro sense, but closer than some other fast 50s. Away from the center, the corners are not that sharp, but in a way that helps to increase subject isolation. In dull light, the color straight out of camera can look rather murky and sometimes a little oily, so you'll normally need to spend time boosting the contrasts and colors in post-processing. The good news is that the images can normally handle a lot of pushing and pulling, and this is a good sign because it means the images straight out of camera have a good amount of detail. Stopped down, the contrast and corner sharpness improves a bit, but let's face it, it's not a stellar lens for, say, detailed landscapes, and you can find better choices elsewhere in the Helios 44 series. The main reason to buy a Helios 44-2, of course, is for the swirly bokeh. It can be fascinating and uniquely different from most other lenses. If you own one of these lenses, you'll know the swirls don't magically appear on all images. You have to work hard to find the right compositions, background and light to get those swirls. But when you do, the results are wonderful. The challenge of producing swirls is a lot of fun in its own right, but you can also adopt the lens to do more tricks. On this one, I've used a homemade star filter on the front of the lens. And on this one, I've actually reversed the front element. It's not hard to do. Now, let's get on to the 44-2 siblings. The 44-2 is in fact only one of a number of Helios 44s. There's the 44, the 44-3, the 44M, the 44M-4, plus the 44M-5, 6 and 7, which are not here. In fact, this JOV-made 44-2 is not even the only version of the Helios 44-2. This one has white markings rather than green markings, and was manufactured in 1973 in the MMZ factory. And there's a zebra version, actually it's marked 44, not 44-2, and it was made quite a bit earlier in 1960, also at MMZ. For the record, a third factory, the KMZ Works, also made the lenses. The Helios 44s are basically copies of the Carl Zeiss Jena Biotar 58F2s, or at least a copy of the Biotar optical design. And here it is. This lens dates to the end of 1949, and it's an M42 mount. Despite its small size, it contains an impressive 17 blades diaphragm, and what a beautiful compact piece of engineering it is. At the end of the war, the Russians took the Zeiss designs and materials back to Russia and copied them. The Helios 44-2 is not the first copy. The first version I have is this silver 44. It's not a direct copy of the Zeiss. For starters, the Helios has a preset mechanism at the front that the Zeiss doesn't. The preset has 2 rings, one to set the aperture and one to set the range of possible apertures. One advantage of this is you can have a clickless aperture ring that goes from closed at f16 to wide open at f2. It's good for videographers as well as photographers. This early Helios was made with an M39 mount rather than M42. I put an adapter ring on top of the M39 so it turns into an M42. The lens has 13 aperture blades. That's 5 more than the later 44-2. The extra blades do make a difference to the smoothness of the bokeh closed down, but other than the blades, I'd say the 44's images are broadly similar to the 44-2's. Perhaps my copy has a little more contrast and a little less swirl, but it's not a significant difference. The 44 is harder to find and more expensive to buy, and for that reason, if I could only keep one of these lenses, I'd keep this one. But on the whole, in terms of value for money, I recommend you stick with the 44-2. Back to these two 44-2s made in different factories. Does it really matter which one to buy? Well, from my experience, no. But there's one big but, and that's sample variation. There were differences in the build quality of new lenses coming off the production lines. And like all old lenses really, you need to be careful about the condition of the lens today. Some of these lenses have been absolutely beaten up over the years, and they can also have oily blades and old grease making the focus very sticky. The next lens in line is this Helios 44-3. It has a redesigned body. It's more sturdy. The 44-2 can wobble a bit on modern digital camera adapters, but this one is rock solid. You have to be careful about the specific version, as the design of the mount of one of the versions doesn't fit properly on some cameras and adapters. You should search the net for more details about this and how it applies to your camera. After doing my research, I found a version that fits just fine. Some owners of this lens argue that it's actually the best of all lenses. That's because it combines the swirls of the early 44-2s with the improved contrasts and colours of the later lenses in a better body. At least that's what some people say. I'm not so sure. For example, the 44-3 doesn't have the quality of multi-coatings that the 44M-4 and later versions have. But still, it's a fine lens, and if build quality is a factor, then this is a good one to get, if you can find one at a reasonable price. It's rarer and more expensive than the 44-2. Now onto the Helios 44 and another design change. You can't accuse the Russians of being slow to change their designs. This lens doesn't have two preset aperture rings, it has a more conventional ring at the back. And they've added a manual automatic switch. It's quite a heavy beast. It really feels like it's made of tank metal. It has 8 blades like the 44-2, but they're not so well aligned, giving it a slight sawtooth look in some stops. My version has been around the block. It cost me the equivalent of a couple of cappuccinos from a thrift shop. It was covered in dust and dirt, but it cleaned up okay, and now takes perfectly good images. It's definitely not as swirly as the 44-2 on the other hand. Where the 44M is a better lens is it has better corner sharpness and better contrasts and colours. The images require less post-processing. It's a good lens and one I can easily recommend. Finally, the 44M-4 and yet another redesign. The body has been tweaked, it's lost its AM switch, plus there are more coatings to the glass. This lens is much more like the multi-coated Fast 50s produced by the Japanese, and it stands up well to those lenses as well as the main competitor from Russia, the highly rated Zenitar M51.7. By this stage in the development of the 44s, the Russian designers had largely ironed out the aberrations and swirls. The later 44M5s, 6s and 7s refined this design, so I haven't seen the need to add to this collection. The 44M4 is a fine lens. It has good sharpness across the frame, good colours, and it's a lens you could happily use as a walk-around or landscape lens with plenty of details. The key point, though, is it really doesn't swirl like a Helios 44-2. To conclude, if swirls are your thing, then the Helios 44-2 is the one to go for. It's cheap and easy to find, and bags are fun. The 44-2 is by no means a one-trick pony. But if you're not so interested in swirls and you're looking for a good all-round multi-coated Fast 50, then go for the later 44M4s to 7s. However, it's important to add that the 44M7 is not the best performing conventional Fast 50. There are better lenses out there from other makers. Stick with the 44-2. It's a fantastic value for money. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have and would like to subscribe to my channel, that would be great, and I'll add more lens reviews and comparisons, including more Russian lenses.